and welcome back to There's Danger Here. I'm Leilani, and last week I discussed a case, the yogurt shop murders, that occurred in Austin, Texas in 1991. This case was of 4 girls who were brutally murdered in a yogurt shop, and it went unsolved for decades. When it finally was solved, it led to a man being posthumously labeled as a serial killer. So, let's talk about him, shall we? Robert Eugene Brashers was born on March 13th, 1958, in Newport News, Virginia, the youngest of 2, born to Dulce and Nancy Brashers. Sometime when he was young, his family moved from Virginia to Huntsville, Alabama. Other than that information, really not much can be found. If you look him up, sources say Robert graduated high school successfully and upon graduation enlisted in the military, with again conflicting reports on whether it was in the Army or the Navy before he was discharged in the 1980s, moving to New Orleans, Louisiana. Then again, nothing, no information at this time, until he once again moved, this time going to Fort Myers, Florida. Finally, on November 22nd, 1985, our first hint of the monster that is Robert occurs. He met Michelle Wilkerson, a 24-year-old, in Fort Pierce, and the two went to a bar together. After the bar, Robert took Michelle to a dark alleyway near Citrus Grove, where they downed another 6-pack. Then, Robert attempted to have sexual relations with her, but Michelle declined and attempted to leave at this point. Robert fought her and ended up shooting her in the neck and the head twice. So talk about an escalation. Michelle was a fighter, however, managing to get out of the car, run, and she hid in a culvert under the road. Robert immediately disposed of the gun on the beach, getting into his vehicle and getting stuck in the sand as a result. While he went on foot for assistance, Michelle ran to the closest building, which was an apartment building. There, a good Samaritan found her, helped her, and got her to the Lawnwood Hospital. Police came out and Michelle gave a full description of Robert and his car to them. Police immediately started canvassing the area, finding Robert, who was still seeking help to get his vehicle out of the sand. Talk about instant karma. Robert was arrested and charged with attempted first-degree murder, aggravated battery, and using a firearm during commission of a crime. In 1986, he was convicted and sentenced to 12 years. Unfortunately, he served just 3 before being released for good conduct. Because, how hard is it to be good when you're being watched 24/7? Meaning, however, if he had served his entire sentence, he wouldn't have had the means to commit the yogurt shop murders, along with the other crimes he committed during the time he was out. When he was released, Robert began his series of moving between states. First, he moved to South Carolina, then Tennessee, and Georgia. At some point, he managed to meet a woman, and the couple had their first daughter, Deborah Brashers, born in 1991. On December 8th, 2 days after the yogurt shop murders, Robert was pulled over by police in El Paso, heading to Las Cruces. At the time, Robert had a .380 pistol on him that turned out to be the same make and model used to kill Amy, the youngest of the teens in the yogurt shop murder. It would later be used to link the crime when, in 2025, the .380 was put back into the National Integrated Ballistics Information Network, or NIBIN, system. At the time of his arrest, the gun was confiscated, then simply returned to Robert's father, who, we know, later gave it back to him because it was in his possession. Later on February 18, 1992, Robert was arrested in Cobb County, Georgia. This time, it was for grand theft auto, unlawful possession of a weapon, and theft. During the arrest, police searched his vehicle and apartment, where a radio scanner, a police jacket, lockpicking tools, and a fake Tennessee driver's license were found. Robert made a plea deal with prosecutors and pleaded guilty to one of the charges, the rest of which were dropped. As part of the deal, his sentence was 5 years. This time, he thankfully served his entire sentence before being released in February of 1997. Immediately, he began his series of moving around, This time, he went from Tennessee to Arkansas and Missouri. During a later interview, his daughter Deborah reported that she first saw her father in early 1997, after he had just been released from prison. For the next 2 years, he lived with her mother, and her half-sisters intermittently. He had a temper, and even once got into a physical altercation with her stepfather, resulting in a head injury from a drill. Robert even made a tape recording himself making small cuts on his neck and arm with a saw to see if he could withstand the pain. During this time, Robert worked as a handyman. He did some work for a woman in Paragould, Arkansas. Then, on April 12th, 1998, he cut the phone line, carried a gun, and broke into the same woman's home. Robert was arrested during the commission of the breaking and entering. Again, during the arrest, he was searched, and a video camera and locksmithing tools were found. Robert managed to post bail and quickly left the area. Deborah says at this time, Robert's mental health sharply deteriorated, circa April 1998, and that his job at a construction firm led him to be more absent from the house up to weeks at a time. On January 13th, 1999, police officers spotted a stolen vehicle that had been parked in a parking lot of a Super 8 hotel in Kennett, Missouri. The motel employee gave the information of who checked in that registered their car, along with the room number. Police quickly gained entry, finding Robert under the bed with his daughter, 2 stepdaughters, and their mother. As police attempted to extricate him, he began shooting. Officers left the area immediately, calling for backup. 4 hours into negotiations, the women were finally released. But a shot rang out. Robert had shot himself in the head. Initially surviving, he lasted 6 days before dying as a result of complications from the gunshot wound on January 19th, 1999. That was what we knew about Robert for almost 2 decades. Finally, in 2018, genealogist Cece Moore from Parabon Nanolabs was able to identify Robert as a suspect in 3 murders and several rapes dating back to 1990. Police knocked on the door of Deborah, again his daughter, on the 2nd or 3rd of September 2018. They asked what she could remember about the man, if she had a photograph of him, and if she was willing to give a DNA sample. She willingly complied with the requests. She said in a later interview, quote, "Genealogists and true crime documentary people, they feel themselves that there was more. There's more. We know there's more. There's going to be a lot more." Just thankful. I'm thankful. The only thing I can say is that I'm very thankful that these people are getting answers, even though my father is not going to get not going to get the satisfaction of being able to know that my father went to jail, paid for his crimes, because how do I say, suicide is not a way to pay for your crime. It's a cowardly act. It's a very cowardly act because you decided to be whoever you are, whatever you want to call it, because it's not a man, and you've decided to do this. There are people in the world that you just don't touch. And no matter how wrong you are and how much of a low down, dirty person you can be, you just don't touch children and you don't mess with women. Like, there's standards, even the evilest people in this world. And my father had to have been the 7th layer of Hades to be how he is. End quote. After her DNA result bolstered investigation, the result was a motion to exhume his remains filed by the state. On 27 of September 2018, Robert's body was in fact exhumed from the cemetery in Paragould, Arkansas, and DNA was extracted from his bones. The resulting DNA was a match for the murder of 28-year-old Genevieve, or Jenny, Zitricki, who had been bludgeoned, raped, and strangled with pantyhose at her apartment in Greenville, South Carolina, on April 5, 1990. After murdering her in her bedroom, Robert dragged her body into a bathtub and submerged her, and then wrote, quote, "Don't fuck with my family," end quote. on the bathroom mirror. Nothing has come from this. On March 28, 1998, in Porterville, Missouri, Robert entered the home of 38-year-old Sherry Scher and her 12-year-old daughter Megan, tied them up and raped the 12-year-old, and then shot them both with a .22 caliber gun. Approximately 2 hours later, he broke into another home, approximately 42 miles away from Dryersburg, Tennessee. Robert knocked on the door of the family of 5. Robert had stopped his van and asked for directions as a ruse. He then attempted to force himself into the residence of a 25-year-old female and her 4 children. Robert pulled out his .22 and fired a shot, hitting the mother in the arm. He then tied up the family and raped the 14-year-old within the home. The female provided a description of the suspect and assisted with a composite drawing. Ballistics connected the Dyer County incident to the Scher murders. While a rape kit was obtained at the time, it wasn't submitted for testing until 2016, when it was made public that the Memphis PD had collected more than 12,000 rape kits going back to the 80s. They were simply never tested. On September 26, 2025, the Austin Police Department officially announced that Robert had committed the murder of the 1991 Austin Yogurt Shop murders. A month later, in October, Robert was announced to have committed murder in Kentucky, in which a woman was raped and fatally shot and possibly set on fire. But there's no information on that case that I can really find. After garnering all the information, the Austin police said of solving the yogurt shop murders, quote, "Our team never gave up working this case. For almost 34 years, they have worked tirelessly and remain committed to solving this case for the families of Jennifer Harbison, Sarah Harbison, Eliza Thomas, and Amy Ayers. All innocent lives taken senselessly and far too soon. We have identified a suspect in these murders through a wide range of DNA testing. The suspect is Robert Eugene Brashers, who committed suicide in 1999." End quote. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton wrote a statement as well, seemingly reiterating the thoughts of the APD. Quote, "My cold case and missing persons unit was instrumental in this major discovery that has led to the identification of the new suspect, Robert Brashers. We have worked hand in hand with local law enforcement since 2022 in order to reach this breakthrough. The tireless dedication and hard work of my team directly contributed to this development, and it's why I established the cold case and missing persons unit in my office. We will never cease in the relentless pursuit of justice for victims and their loved ones." End quote. Now, it's not always that we get family members' reactions to how it feels to be related to a killer. Deborah conducted an interview and she reported that she doesn't talk much with her own family anymore. However, that one cousin she does, she did have a conversation about being related to Robert, being his daughter. She said of this, quote, "That's my father. That's not my identity. And I completely understand that, and I completely agree with that. He's not my identity at all. But I still have ties to my father, and I have reached out to family members like in South Carolina and Greenville. I've reached out to Geneva, a brother, and he said himself that it's not my place to say sorry. But my father's not here to say sorry, and it's inherited shame that I'm not okay with. And I want to know, for people to know, that I'm very sorry. I'm not trying to make their crime or their crimes or their family hurt and their pain and everything into nothing at all whatsoever. I just know that people want to know from family members, and I know a lot of family members that when their family gets caught, they shut down or they're mad about it. But when you're a horrible person and you're wrong and you do bad, you get bad. You do good, you get good. That's what my mother lived by and what she taught me. My father done bad, so he does not deserve any good at all." End quote. And with that, that is the case of Robert Brashers and how he was posthumously linked to multiple murders, making him a known serial killer. how DNA finally resolves several of these cases conclusively. And while it doesn't change the events that occurred, it may offer some variants of closure for those that are affected. Remember, to all those out there listening, be careful. It's a dangerous world we live in.